I'm doing the same.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown, and welcome to Respite in Place. It's a show that shows you how to turn a space in your house, in your yard, in your community into a space that gives you a break. So I'm so happy and delighted to welcome Michele Ertl-Rosner to our show today. Hi, Michele.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me, Denise.
So Michele and her husband have 4 kids, including Julia, who has complex care needs. And Michele joined a training that I held in June, just a couple months ago. And we were talking about respite in place. And Michele said, "Oh my gosh, I'm in my respite in place." And you were, because you were outside for the training. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. So we've been talking about your space, and I thought it would be so helpful to have you talk to everybody else about your space. So you transformed your backyard. Tell us
hmm
about the vision you had for it.
So we live in the Midwest. And so one of our visions was to be able to extend our living space and use the outdoor space. And we kept in mind that it is the seasonal Midwest. And so our summer is pretty short. So we wanted to make the most of the summer season, but also be able to use it into the fall and even sometimes into the winter. We were looking for a place that we could welcome family and friends. And I selfishly wanted it to be, I'm a work from home person. And so I wanted to have what I call my summer office. And so we really wanted to use this outdoor space where I am right now as fun space, space, respite space, really get as much value and mileage out of it as we could.
I love it because when I think of an outdoor space, I often think just one purpose, which is a place for me to go and read a book. And I love that you thought about the possibilities for the space. When did you start planning the transformation?
So we had an existing patio back here, but it was not as multi-purpose. And so I would say my husband and I have been talking about what we could do with our patio for a couple of years. But we've really been seriously talking about it maybe for 2 years or so, and started talking to some landscape architects to start talking about how can we use this space, what we need to do. Really making sure we brought in someone that would help us with making it wheelchair accessible for our daughter and brainstorming. We spent a lot of time thinking through all of the different uses we wanted to have for this space so that we could design it accordingly.
Let's talk a little bit about the professionals you hired to help. I'm curious as to the search for the right professional because you had really specific needs so that Julia could enjoy the space as much as everybody else. So, how did you find the right professionals to help you not only plan but also create the space?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did is sometimes you can get someone who will design your space as part of kind of the package, and then they'll also do the work to install it. We took a little bit different route, and we actually found someone who we paid for the design. And so we weren't committed to using them for the services. We just wanted to have someone who would work with us hand in hand on the design. And so he came to our space, he walked it, he measured it, we talked about it, we showed, here's Julia, this is, we're designing around her needs as well as the rest of the family. It's not just Julia's space, it's all of ours. But I think that was probably one of the key things that really helped, is to focus on finding someone who wasn't doing that design as sort of like part of the package or as an incentive to, create a space that was going to be expensive to install. We paid for the design. And I think that was a worthwhile investment.
So, when did you actually start transforming the space?
So we took more than a year in advance that we started planning. Um, First of all, it was hard to find a landscape team that had uh, the bandwidth to do the work. So it took maybe 6 to 8 weeks for the design to be developed. And then it took us a little bit more time to actually choose the landscape design team that would do the installation. But work actually, and then we had to get on their list of, who was next in the queue. So the work actually started on this space in October of 2019. So we were going to be the last job of the fall for this team. And unfortunately, in the Midwest that year, it was a very early start to winter. We actually had significant snowfall on Halloween. And so our job turned out to be the last job of that fall and also their first job of the spring because they weren't able to finish before winter.
So what did that space in transition look like?
It was a hot mess. It was, I mean, it was it was not, it wasn't really what I would call usable. We could sit on it if we wanted to, but it didn't really matter so much because it was winter and we wouldn't have been out here a whole lot anyway. There was a point in time because our whole yard got ripped up. The guys had to use equipment to get to the backyard, which meant our front yard looked just as bad. So I have at the time teenage boy with a truck with four-wheel drive. So he decided since mom and dad's yard was all ripped up, he'd just take his truck four-wheeling in the backyard, which was never going to be an opportunity again. And I have pictures of my teenage boy using a shovel to dig himself out of his dilemma. So it was an interesting winter because our yard was just, it was ripped up and it was a mess.
So I don't want to make an assumption, but I think of a mess as adding stress. And I wondered how that felt to you and how you managed if it felt like stress to you.
So it wasn't stress as much as anticipation. We were so excited to be able to get out into this space. And especially when it started to get a little bit warmer in the spring. And I think we were practically on the, the lead guy's front door step saying like, are you coming to finish? Are you coming to finish? We were just so excited about having the space. I think that we were super fortunate. We've done home modifications indoors, and that's a lot tougher to live through because it's harder to avoid. This was a little easier. I just didn't look out the back window as much. So it was okay.
So when did they start then in the spring of 2020 and when did they finish?
So they started pretty early in the spring, and by April, Mayish, the space was completed. So it was somewhat fortunate that they worked on it in late fall and early spring because by the summer then it was ready to go and we got that full summer. That was last year. And yeah, obviously this year we're here all the time.
So what was the first thing you did once the space was ready?
We had my parents come over because it was finished in the late spring of 2020. So we were all quarantined. So it actually gave us an opportunity to be able to have my parents here at our home, but still remain socially distanced. It gave us the ability to be outside. So from that standpoint, it was really a saving grace. But I mean, the patio hasn't had its big inaugural party debut just because we've been so careful with the social distancing and being very cautious with the virus.
So I think about how amazing it was that it turned out during a time when we all were quarantined in our space, indoor and out. You actually did have that extension of the house into nature so that you could enjoy being outside. And I wonder, what did that do for you during the pandemic?
So just from a practical standpoint, it gave us all more places to be because the kids were home with school. I was working from home. It gave us more space to spread out. And because we had been very deliberate about knowing, I jokingly call this my summer office, but it's really only halfway joking because I truly do spend a lot of time out here working. And so we were very deliberate about putting outlets in key places where I might be setting up my laptop. So we made it easy to use. And I definitely took advantage of that. I mean, there's nothing better than if you're stuck at home working, if you're out on the patio and hearing the breeze and feeling the sunshine, it doesn't feel so much like a work at all. And it doesn't feel so much like you're trapped at home. It feels like you are in an oasis right in your own backyard.
What's so interesting, so the view that we have of you is you surrounded by trees. So you are right there in the middle of nature. And we know that time in nature does help our well-being. And it seems like somehow in our society, we just have spent time away from nature. So I love how you are bringing nature back into everyday life for you. And
Mm-hmm.
it's work, it's family, and it's respite.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I wonder how you use the space now in a way that you hadn't envisioned before.
So one of the things that we did, my husband is an engineer by trade and a gidget gadget man just all around. And so that gazebo is tricked out in amazing ways that I would have never dreamt up. Um, and it feels very decadent in many ways, but there's a TV in there. So one of my very favorite things to do out here now is watch Brewer games. My youngest daughter, Julia's younger sister, is just a huge Brewer fan. And I think we've spent some just wonderful times with the Brewer game and hanging out together. So I don't know that I ever envisioned watching Brewer games out on my patio, but it sure is. It's wonderful.
Oh yeah, that I'm not a Brewers fan. I'm a Cubs fan. However, I have a sibling who's a Brewers fan, so I can appreciate how exciting it is to just be a part of that experience
It
in a
is.
space
It's
that's
pretty
your
neat.
own. So tell us what you're most proud of in terms of the space that you created.
I think the fact that we were so deliberate about how we were going to use the space, how we were going to include Julia, how we were going to have it be a space like we want our house to be a place where the kids feel comfortable bringing their friends. I think that's one of the things when Julia was first born, and she's got some pretty significant seizures, and those can be intimidating. So we just didn't want the other kids to feel like, oh, I'm not quite sure if I feel comfortable bringing my friends around. What if Julia has a seizure? And it just could be an uncomfortable experience. And so we really have worked hard to make our home the place that everybody feels comfortable. And that's definitely happened. We're on the tail end of what we call our summer breakfast club. My kids in the morning do a strength and agility camp. So they go work out hard from 6:30 until 8 in the morning with some of their friends from school. And then they come back here and have breakfast. So yeah, breakfast club, it's super fun. So I bring my griddle outside, we flip pancakes, we make bacon on the grill. Like they're living a charmed life. They're living a charmed life for sure. But it's awesome. And then they go sit in the gazebo and hang out, maybe watch a movie. It's just a really, it's wonderful. I love seeing everyone enjoying the space. I love that it's a space that Julia can enjoy, we can enjoy. It's family time, it's friend time. It's time. I think all of us have spent time out here alone and just having our own respite. I can bring a book and curl up or um, binge watch Virgin River. I mean, there's a lot you can do out here.
So I love this idea that you had these ideas, visions for, in essence, kind of like categories for the space. And one of the categories was family, but you really have extended the definition of family to include community,
Hmm.
so that your kids have their own circle of their own friends, which is like their family that it's also taking
Hmm.
advantage of the space, which is just beautiful. Tell us how you accommodated Julia in the space.
So one of the very kind of foundational things we did is just logistically, the space is sort of, to get to it, you have to come down a hill on one side, a hill on the other side, or a set of stairs. So to get back here initially was just a little bit challenging with Julia's wheelchair. And so we created a path that goes all the way from the front yard sidewalk by the street all the way to the backyard onto the patio. And so it's just, I mean, pretty important to be able to get her back here easily, and we can do that now. So that was an important thing. We also were just very deliberate about how the space is laid out in terms of leaving enough space to get around the table, leaving enough space to go inside the gazebo. There's a fire feature in there, and so we wanted to make sure that like we had a spot for Julia. Everything's mapped out. So everywhere that like every space on the patio, there's a spot that Julia can be comfortably. and we can, spin her wheelchair, and it's laid out to be accommodating for her.
And what does Julia enjoy about this space?
I think all of it. She enjoys hanging out. She's got a friend, actually today, she's got a friend that's stopping over. They're having lunch together. So they'll sit out here on the patio. She loves being with the rest of us. She loves being outside. We made sure that the gazebo was screened. Wisconsin has many, many mosquitoes and bugs, and that was something in the past that sort of prevented us from fully enjoying the space. So we made sure that we kept a place that could be bug free. And we spent a lot of time thinking about this patio down to the what seems like small details, but really became pretty important in making the space really, really accommodating and easy to use. I think that we're all human, and if it's hard to do it and if it's inconvenient, we sort of shy away from it. And maybe it feels easier to just sit on the couch and watch the Brewer game instead of coming outside. Except we've made it easy enough that it really just feels like an extension of home, of the indoor space.
Okay, I wonder how you feel about taking us on a tour.
Sure, I'm happy to. I'll flip my camera around and here we go.
As you do that, what's the size of the space?
Oh boy, it's been a little while since we actually talked numbers. It's pretty big. I guess I would say big.
Yeah.
So I'm walking now to show you the path that we put in. I'll start at the beginning. This is sort of the way that leads to it all. And we did it. It's a curving path because we wanted it to be pretty and kind of just have that relaxing feel.
Yes. Oh my
So
gosh,
you
what a
walk
great
past the
idea.
trees. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do a slow spin so I don't make anybody sick with my movement. So here's sort of your initial view as you come down around.
Michele, I love that you talked about the curved path because there's an opportunity in that curved path too to really see from different vantage points. That's beautiful. Okay, so look at that grill. That's awesome. Tell us why the grill is important to you.
So it's another one of those things that we were very deliberate about where we invested money and where we saved money. And I do a lot of cooking. I also do, Julia is G-tube fed, but we feed her a completely pureed diet. So from a practical standpoint, grilling out chicken or grilling out food helps me prep food that we're all going to enjoy, including Julia. The other thing is we knew that we would be serving like buffet style. So we wanted to have the counter space. There's outlets. Electrical was a huge consideration. So I can plug in a slow cooker or I can plug in a blender for making some of those fancy cocktails. So we really can do a complete entertainment. There's a little fridge. There's space for a garbage can. Like it's pretty multifunctional. A sink was important too. We wanted people to have the ability to wash their hands. So we were pretty deliberate about that.
Yeah, that's
And then
awesome.
Sort of the foundation of the whole backyard is the gazebo. You can see there's a fire feature inside, and I'll take you on in. It's screened. We were very careful to do the door with the magnet, so it's easy to get Julia through the doorway. It's really handy to have a husband who's an engineer and just gadgety. We spent a lot of time choosing the furniture. We sat in the Home Depot display area for probably 2 hours one night, sat in the furniture. We tried to get as much of it as we could and sort of laid it out so we knew the space, so we knew what size gazebo we wanted to get. We really thought it through from start to finish.
I love that you gave yourself that time, Michele.
I think
Go ahead.
I think that was critical to the success, to really take our time with it and not rush in. I think if we wouldn't have spent as much time, we might have scaled things down and done things a little bit smaller. And we really thought it through and thought about, first of all, we have 4 kids, as you mentioned. So even just our own family, there's 6 of us. We often have my parents live nearby. They often come. And so we wanted to really be deliberate about how much seating we had so everybody could sit down comfortably.
So the gazebo has the fire feature, and I'm just
Yep.
curious, What temperature do you say, okay, that is too cold to go out? What's the break?
Well, I we're here really unnecessary because Julia's a little less cold weather tolerant. But my husband and I sat out here on New Year's Day this year, so I would say it's reasons we can be out here. The fire feature is pretty large, and if you crank that fire up, it can get nice and toasty warm even on a cold day. I think it's
Yeah,
more important that it's just not a really windy winter day,
yeah.
because then the fire is not such an easy to use feature. And then the other thing we were very deliberate about is making a really, on the plan, it seemed almost obnoxious, a really big circle for the dining table. But turned out to be, I mean, that was another thing. We like literally laid the table out in our driveway and put the chairs around it and did chalk circles to find out exactly what size to make the patio circle. And I feel like we got it just right. Like it's comfortable without being too large, and it seats our whole family plus my parents. So it's good for a crowd.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
then this will take you back the way we came in. We strung up party lights because no patio is complete without a little party light action.
I love that. So you've got really, I'm thinking, four dedicated spaces. So the space where you've got those two chairs right there, the
Yep.
space where you prepare and cook food, the
Oh, that's this
gazebo,
direction. Yep.
the gazebo, and then where you sit and visit and eat.
Yes. Well, and I would say a fifth space is kind of down the middle between the grilling area and the table. We made that big enough so that we could do things like cornhole or do games
Oh,
back here. So we left what seems like a dance floor's worth of space in the middle, partially because it just feels nice to have that space for movement, but also so we could set up our cornhole game and do that as well.
that's awesome. And cornhole is a big game to play before the Brewers game if you go up to a Brewers game and you tailgate. So
For sure. We have to practice at home so we don't look silly in the parking lot.
Okay, that's beautiful. And you know what I was thinking before you gave us the tour? I was wondering how much time does it take to take care of the space? And it seems like you've created this space that is convenient but also easy to maintain. That's how it looks to me, and I'm wondering how it is for you.
100%. We don't spend a lot of time, except for my husband, who's pretty particular, and he uses his leaf blower like a woman would use a vacuum cleaner inside. And he was out here last night knowing that we'd be having a tour. He's like, I'm gonna get that leaf blower up, make sure the patio is cleared so that you can do the video. So other than his own obsession with keeping every leaf and little twig off of the patio, it really doesn't take a lot of maintenance at all. We've got it set up that we can put tarps, similar to how the screen is in there. There's tarp curtains that we can winterize, so we can pull those around so that the furniture doesn't get full of snow and winter kind of stuff. So yeah, it is pretty we don't have to do a lot. I have to water my flowers once in a while. But my husband of course thought ahead, so there's a place to hook up a hose and I can do that in 3 minutes flat. So yeah, it is. I think that's a good point you bring up, that you don't want your respite space to, if you love to garden, that's great. We could have opportunities for that. I like to look at the pretty flowers. I don't necessarily want to be pulling weeds too often.
Not at all. So it sounds like, no, I'm wondering if you actually like, you talk a lot about how you had a vision for the space and you actually in essence practiced the space, like you drew a circle around the
Mm-hmm.
table to better understand like how big do we make this dining space. I'm wondering how often did you walk through the space before you started the planning process in order to inspire the planning process, meaning this is where we'll put this is where we'll put this is what it could look like if we do this.
Oh, frequently. I mean, my husband staked it out. We put stakes and string, so we did that. We laid out the furniture that would go in the gazebo and did a measurement. we got the gazebo from Costco and there were 3 different sizes. And initially we thought we would get the medium size because it just seemed like the big one was kind of just too big. And then we started laying out the furniture and we're like, you know what, the big one will be just right. And so I think a lot of that, wherever we could mock it up, really helped us make decisions. I'm not always the best at spatial, like I can't do it in my head. I want to see it in real life. I think the other thing that really helped is the landscape architect that designed the space. Once he did the rendering of it, he was able to create a video like we were flying through the space. And that was it was super fun because it made us so excited, like what it was going to be like when the space was done. But it was also very practical. Like we could see, like, oh wait, come go back to that spot where we come onto the patio. That seems like it's a little bit too tight, and we need to widen that corner out because we want to make sure it's really, wheelchair accessible. And we didn't want it to feel like you were going through a tight area to get into the space. We wanted it to feel wide open and welcoming from the beginning. So that video option was like, it gave us this great sneak peek and we could make some design tweaks based on that.
It's such a perfect, beautiful space. I
Oh,
just
thank you.
I just wonder, is there a next generation of the space? Meaning, are you thinking, oh my gosh, there is a little part that we haven't used that we could use? And if there is, what would you use it for?
Boy, I have to say that this is a project where we got done, and I don't know that we had a lot of like second thoughts or missing things. It's been a pretty usable space. We'll see if that holds when we have a larger gathering. We've got some high schoolers who will be graduating, and I envision like how nice it would be to have everyone have that celebration out here. But as it is right now, our plans aren't necessarily to tweak this. We feel like it's really, really usable for us, and we've moved on to other areas of our home.
Oh, but I love that. It's the completion. And now you enjoy the completion of it. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't walk out here and think like, oh, but if we only would have done X, Y, or Z. I walk out here and I think, oh, this is perfect. We're so fortunate. It just, yeah, we really are lucky. And lucky and just very, very deliberate planners. I think that hours and hours of time spent thinking about it and talking about it. And I can't emphasize enough really thinking through like how we wanted to use this space and then making sure we just really thought through like as much as possible walk through, but talk through, walk through, think through all of the things that we would do.
So, for our viewers who think, wow, what next step could you offer to them to turn a wow into a plan for a space that can give back to them like this space gives back to you?
I think that it doesn't have to be. I mean, we have a big family and we have someone in a wheelchair, so we needed a bigger space. And I think that kind of naturally lends itself to being a wow. And it is a little bit more like it was something that we needed to plan for, we needed to save for, we needed to think it through. But I think that, for a while we just had that set of 2 glider chairs, and that was a respite space, just thinking about where do I want that to be? What do I want to do in the space? Do I have a place to set my glass of lemonade? Do I have a place to kick my feet up? Am I in the shade? If you just think through the space you have available, I think that's one of the things that we've done a lot of home modifications. And we live in a home that, quite honestly, we called it our starter home. It's a really simple 3-bedroom ranch home. We bought it before we had kids. And so we've had a lot of practice adapting small spaces into doing a lot of hard work for us. So our starter home is going to be our finisher home. I'm never leaving this patio now. But we've gotten a lot of practice really thinking through the space that we have available. We have a really tiny bathroom inside that we've modified. It does things you would never believe a single tiny bathroom could do. And I think it's just being very deliberate about thinking through your plans. I and really pushing yourself to think outside of the box and not getting caught up in like, well, I don't have enough space for that, or I don't have enough budget for that, or kind of putting all of those boundaries on yourself. I think it starts with thinking about, what do I have? What space do I have? What time, money, resources, friends who are good at certain things? Like, what do I have at my disposal that could help me create a respite in place for myself?
And what I love about what you showed us is that it does inspire us to think about, you know what? I can set up a chair outside with a table. I can get a simple umbrella and I can put some potted plants around me, and that's my respite space.
Hmm.
And just calling it your respite space, I think transforms it. It becomes
Yeah.
a purpose for the space and a way for you to say, this is where I take a break.
Yeah. So true.
So, for our viewers, if you have questions for Michele, you can put them in the comments section and I'll make sure that Michele sees them, because I'm sure you're going to have some comments and questions about what she's created, because it really is just inspiring to think about what's
Mm.
possible. It's so awesome. It's so awesome. Michele, thank you
I
so much.
yeah, I never would have thought that a space like this would be something like, I thought it was something that I would see on TV commercials for the cool deck boards. I mean, you see all those commercials and you see those beautiful spaces and you think, wow, that's really nice for someone. But it's not just for someone. It became ours, after a lot of planning and hard work.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It was so fun to
Thank
take
you.
the tour. It really, it was awesome. It was awesome.
Oh, good. I hope it was. I hope I didn't move too fast. I don't want that motion and moving around can make people a little bit seasick.
And please thank your husband for blowing the leaves.
I will tell him. Ah.
Okay, everybody, thanks so much for watching. This is our Respite in Place show. And please reach out if you have a place that you call respite in your house, backyard, or community. We'd love to feature it. Thanks again, Michele. Great to connect with you.
Thanks, Denise.
Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.